like to have both of you answered. First, Peter.
Well, I don't think there's anything holding it back. There's enormous, like I said, there's enormous amounts of investment going into alternative energies today. And I think that every alternative energy that people can produce at a price that people are prepared to pay is being moved forward. So I think the problem is what people are prepared to pay for the energy. Nobody's holding it back. Obviously, my company is, our business, 90% of our business is the oil business and the natural gas business. But we have solar business, we have a biodiesel business, we have in the United States we now have about 6% of our gasoline is ethanol. And now everybody's complaining about food prices going up. So I mean, the problem is, I think there are lots of alternative energies being developed. Particularly the biofuels that come from non-food sources are not really at any kind of a stage yet that anybody can build a commercial plant, but those are being planned. So I think it is a question of time, and I think the time scales, of course, are probably longer than people want. But I think, if energy prices stay anything like they are today, people are rapidly developing solar projects, people are rapidly developing wind projects, people are rapidly developing biofuel projects, people are rapidly developing nuclear projects and geothermal projects. But even with all of that going on, the world's demand for energy is still such that oil and gas and coal are going to be an important part of it. So I think higher prices are dragging lots of money into these alternatives. I think lots of them are appearing in the marketplace. We sell lots of fuel cells, we sell lots of solar panels installed to people to reduce their energy bills in installation in buildings and in military installations and in jails and all kinds of places. So lots of that is happening, but at the scale that energy is needed, still the vast amount of the scale comes from these fossil fuels, I'm afraid, at the moment. And that seems to me is a generational thing. I mean, I really believe that it's going to take a generation to make a significant change to the fuel mix. But lots of money going in today, lots of new things being developed, lots of ideas being worked. We support them. I don't think there's anybody holding them back.
The thing is, we cannot wait anymore for a generation for that. We have to go much, much faster. We cannot just say, okay, solar power is nice for buildings, for jails, for little houses. We need solar power plants, solar thermal power plants, like the ones now being planned by the Abu Dhabi people from Masdar all over the world. We need it on a much more massive scale to solve the problems we are facing, climate change and the scarcity of fossil fuels. This is what we need to do. Economically, it is now much, as I said before, much beyond the pilot project. It is now mainstream. It is economically feasible, especially with oil prices above the $50 margin, per barrel. So today, and this I would like to answer to what Mr. Reza has said before. The sad thing about it, the issue of nuclear is a tragedy, is a tragic path. If you go there, you are going into a very, very dangerous path, not for political reasons now, but for environmental reasons. Every dollar you invest in nuclear power, the same dollar will give you 2 to 3 times more jobs and more energy if you put it in solar power or wind power.
Okay, so, Fuad, I just want to take some more questions. I'm going to stop you there. Thanks. From 3, I appreciate your patience. I'm going to come 3 and 4 here, yeah? Please. If I can ask you to be very direct with the question, thanks.
الواقع أحب أن أتكلم بالعربية، ولكن مثل ما قال الأخ الزميل سعيد فرح الغامدي إنه الموجودين كلهم بالكلام بالإنجليزي. Now, as long that we are knowing that the danger is approaching, do we have, and again from the human rights point of view, from the dignity of the future, now is there a strategy to reduce amount of use of oil because of the climatic problems, something that need global cooperation, especially the GCC countries, for instance, and then with the support of other neighborhood like Iran and other country around us. Do we have a strategy? Somebody can answer these questions. Do we have a strategy now with all these problems approaching us? Thank you.
Okay, it's a very interesting question, and I think I'd like to pose it in a different, not a different way. I think it's something we can direct it towards, if I can say that to you kindly. Many people talk about these institutions being out of date for the 21st century, and where do we have a global strategy coming together to look forward if you have different institutions that don't match where the economy is going today? And do you want to tackle it in that sort of context? Because I think that's what we're talking about. The GCC is coming together for a single market and a single currency, but not in relation to what's happening with the G8, for example. Do we need to think bigger to have bigger solutions? What?
You know, we have the Kyoto Protocol, which has been signed in 1995, and unfortunately the GCC countries have tried everything to water it down in the 1990s. Now, they are not watering it down, but not really supporting it. What we need now is, in 2 years, a post-Kyoto protocol that will develop strategies worldwide towards reducing CO2 emissions, meaning reducing the burning and using of fossil fuels like gas and oil and so on, and investing much more in energy efficiency and renewable fuels. This is the strategy that is being thought and developed globally. In Europe, they have a strategy. They want in 15 years to have 20% of their energy consumption from renewable energies. This is a revolution. They agreed on that. In the GCC countries, only Abu Dhabi is thinking in that direction. And that's why my appeal is that big heavyweights like Saudi Arabia and the GCC or Iran should move in that direction to move the Arab world and the whole region in that direction. Abu Dhabi is good, but it's not big enough. It is not big enough. And I believe that Saudi Arabia is the country that can lead in that direction.
Okay, question number 4. We'll just go through the questions quickly if we can.
Thank you very much, Mohammed Al-Sabban, advisor to the Minister of Petroleum. I think there is, with all respect, some exaggeration and misunderstanding in the discussion. The exaggeration is that Saudi Arabia will face environmental disaster by year 2010. I don't agree with this. Misunderstanding is with regard to the relationship between energy and climate change. We all know that the basic international principle that has been set and agreed upon was the common but differentiated responsibility. So the main burden is with industrialized countries. And saying that, well, Saudi Arabia need to do this and to do that. Of course, we need to do our part, but our fair share. And by the way, Saudi Arabia is leading GCC and other Arab countries. We are a member of the coalition of the carbon sequestration leadership forum of the 25 countries. King Abdullah, the custodian of the Holy Mosque, allocated $300 million for energy and climate change, as been said by Peter and others. So we are doing our part. Is it enough? No, it is not enough. But at the same time, we are puzzled by the signals that has been coming from some of OECD countries. The market distortion existed in these countries are puzzling us. While they are heavily taxing oil, they are still subsidizing coal, while coal is emitting more carbon dioxide than oil, and they are subsidizing nuclear. So these kind of market distortion are puzzling to us, and we are worried that the main intention is not to clean the environment and reduce emissions, but rather to achieve energy security. And this has been said by some politicians from OECD countries, that this climate change, addressing climate change, is a golden opportunity for the West to reduce dependency on imported oil from the Middle East. So that is the case. If that is the case, then we are in a serious trouble, because this will transfer the burden from the historically responsible countries to developing countries such as Saudi Arabia, who are heavily dependent on exporting oil. Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah. Well, about all the subsidies you have mentioned, and about some hidden agendas of the Europeans and some Western countries, some of them, you're right, absolutely. The West is terrified on the issue of energy security, absolutely terrified. They are panicking basically when they think about Russian gas cuts, about oil dependency on the Arabs and so on. But the climate change issue is there. This we cannot deny. And that the main responsibility is to cut oil production, to cut oil consumption and cut CO2 production is in the West, is in the US and in Europe, who are the biggest consumers and the biggest CO2 emitters in the world, especially the USA. Definitely, no doubt about that. But what I'm saying here, that in 2010, you're not going to have environmental disasters. I said in 2010, according to a Gulf Arab study, you will not have enough energy and water for your own population if you continue relying on gas and oil. And the question is, how are you going to address it? How are you going to say, how are you going to secure by 2010 and 2015 enough energy to everybody here? Oil and gas will not be enough. You will have a problem. That's why I'm saying you have to go also parallel to your oil policies. You have to go renewable and sustainable. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I'm going to go to Peter Robinson, and then I'm going to wrap it up in 5 minutes. We have 2 more questions to take after this.
You know, it's very difficult for us to sit here and pronounce as to what the world ought to do. I mean, my job is to produce reliable, affordable energy for people around the world. We heard this morning about all of the people that have come out of poverty over the last few years. These people demand energy. They need heat, they need transportation, they need light, they need security. So we've got this enormous challenge of providing energy for all these people in the world, and then we've got this challenge of climate change, and we've got to deal with both of them. But the answer is we've got to deal with both of them. And governments are struggling. The United States government's struggling. The European governments are struggling to say, how can we provide energy to people? How can we keep energy flowing in the world and flowing in our own country? And how can we address climate change at the same time? And these are inextricable issues and very, very difficult issues. And I just think that these governments are trying to deal with both. Europe's got a plan. You just heard that about, they call it 20-20-20 plan, which is a sophisticated strategy. I think it'll be difficult. It's going to be complicated. It's not going to be easy, but they're set on that path. The United States just passed a law that said that 20% of our gasoline, and how much gasoline the United States used, 20% over the next, I can't remember, 10 or 15 years is going to come from ethanol, from something other than hydrocarbons. So going to come from biofuels, most likely. The United States has got, I think, 7% of our energy today is renewable energy. So, there's huge progress being made, but the world's demanding lots of energy, and we can't just talk about cutting off oil or cutting off coal or cutting off gas. We've got to find ways to deal with coal and oil and gas, and we'll have to recover some of the CO2. There are major projects. Chevron's working on probably the biggest carbon sequestration project in the world in the Gorgon field in Australia, where we're going to put about 3 million tons a year of carbon dioxide into underground and store it forever. So, these things are being worked, and I'm not interested in taking a generation or 2 generations and something that we can do faster than that. I just don't know how we can do it any faster than that. But we're going to get CO2 down somewhat. We're going to continue to provide energy to people in the world. We're going to provide a vast array of different energies, but there is no single solution to this problem. There is no single solution.
Okay, I'm going to go to question number 1 with the microphone number 1. Very briefly, if you can, please.
Yes. My name is Assam Kulthum. My question is to Mr. Fuad Hamdan and the other gentlemen. We know that governments and politics can be driven by hidden agenda. But if listening to what you say, Mr. Fuad, if the numbers are so clear, if the economics are so clear, how come the private sector and business is not picking up and taking the lead?
Okay, very direct question. I think that's changing quite rapidly, as we see now with some of the infrastructure investment taking place. But are they going into diversified energy funds as well?
It's changing a lot, but on the other hand, you have still in many states subsidies going in the wrong way. Sometimes in new energies and new technologies, you need a push from the state, and it's not happening here. Imagine a Saudi Arabia where suddenly Aramco says, okay, oil will still be one of the most important sources of revenue for Saudi Arabia for the next